Hello again, and welcome to a continuation of video number 58, part 3 in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. This was, of course, about the book Invisible Residence. Aliens and UFOs. I could make this into part 4, part 5, but I think this book I'll stop at part 3. I have other UFO books and documents. There's just so much to know here. So let's get on with it. Page 82, Ivan Sanderson, if you remember, wrote this book. They had pictures in here of golden artifacts they found in Bogota, Colombia, and Ecuador, of golden-looking little, like, spaceships. A disquisition upon certain matters, marine time, and the possibility of intelligent life under the waters of this earth was the name of this book. Published in... See, it's important to pay attention to the dates, I think. (1971), third printing, so it goes back to 1970. Ivan T. Sanderson, if you want to look it up on the used book site and buy it. But anyways, he talks about, on page 82, State Gold Treasure on a tour of the United States. This consisted of 100 specimens of ancient gold work selected from the fabulous collection that the country has housed in the Banco de la República of Bogota. So they had this museum exhibition in New York, I think, and they made a book about some of the gold pieces, statues, designs. So I ordered that book, and let me show it to you. Now, when we're talking aliens, UFOs, historic sites, Baalbek, where they have the gigantic block stones the size of semi-tractor trailers, in Lebanon, just north of Israel, and of course all the ancient sites in Israel, and the Egyptian pyramids, and the Machu Picchu lines in South America that you can only see from the sky, and other historical monuments all over the earth that are beyond conception as to the history of mankind. So what existed prior to the history of mankind, which supposedly in our documented history began after the Great Flood, because of course the Great Flood wiped out much of the reality that mankind knew at that time. But anyways, these gold statues in Bogota have some interesting stories to tell, I think. That looks almost like a mask of an astronaut or something. And so I found a few more that could possibly be some kind of artist rendition in gold of a guy in some kind of suit. So my point is, something exists in history that can't be explained today. That's a fact. I don't think there's any argument in that. Machu Picchu, Baalbek, underground caves in Ecuador, underground cities in Venezuela, Easter Island with the gigantic statues. So is it some kind of space uniform? What were they trying to describe? Certainly looks like some kind of man in there. How would it look like if Earthlings landed on Mars with the spacesuits? How would they build gold samples of them? So I did order the book. I found it kind of interesting to look at the pictures. Makes you wonder about history. All made out of gold. So anyways, it was referenced in Ivan Sanderson's book, so I thought I would get it. Moving on here. Apparently, in 500 to 800 AD, or at least over 1,000 years ago, in northern Colombia, apparently they were drawing pictures of aircraft. So what were airplanes doing buzzing around South American skies about the time of the first breakup of the Roman Empire in Europe? Page 87. Like I said before, Ivan Sanderson was a fairly respected author. That's why I continued to do these books. Anyways, let's see what here it says on page 94. Our whole tradition, which ruled our thinking, only until a few decades ago, asserted that we were God's ultimate effort, and that we were unique, and that we were alone when endowed with cognate abilities. Well, those little gold statues, quite old, that tells us a tale of something, including the ancient monuments all over the world of facilities that were definitely seemingly more than 10,000 years ago, before the Great Flood. The very idea of sharing the universe with other intelligent types, and especially with more intelligent ones, was, and still is, almost universally abhorrent to us, that we might have been sharing our own planet with any such types constitute such a complete horror that is just what it has been dubbed as phony. So people think that humans live on planet Earth alone and haven't had anybody else living here. We haven't had anybody else living here. That might not be true, and it seems it's not true. Page 97. For just 100 years now, mariners commanders, captains, masters of ships, and their senior officers have been reporting immense displays of what they rather naturally call lights under the surface of certain seas. I have about 100 cases in my files. We're only going to review a couple here. This is from a statement made by Mr. E.L. Moss in the British scientific periodical Nature in April 1875, as follows. When upon HMS Bulldog, supposedly a ship at sea, a few miles north of the Vera Cruz, he had seen a series of swift lines of light on the sea. And page 98, the greatest number of these wheels of light have been observed in the Persian Gulf and notably the narrows of the Strait of Hormuz, off the coast of Malabar, in the channel between the coast and the Latictive Islands, in the Park Strait north of Ceylon, in the Strait of Malacca between Malay Peninsula and Sumatra, in the Gulf of Siam, in the South China Sea. The reports from the latter are mostly without precise fixes, but one from the Gulf of Sion dated about May 30, 1962, in Notice to Mariners on the U.S. Hydrographic Office is more precise. So they were seeing lights in the sea when they were on their ships in the oceans. Here you are sailing along and you look down, you see some kind of ship flying under the water, lighting it up at night, moving quickly. One of the most remarkable aspects of all these reports is that there are none that I know of or from the open ocean, and almost all are from landside straits. So let's read about a couple of these. About 4 points to the port bow, towards the coast of Iran, there was a luminous band which seemed to pulsate. Its appearance suggested the aurora borealis, but much lower. In fact, it was below the horizon. Examination with binoculars showed that the luminous area was definitely below the horizon in the water and drawing nearer to the vessel. With the approach of this phenomenon, it became apparent that the pulsation seemed to be in the center of the band, with the flow outwards towards the extremities. So you suppose some kind of fish could do this? At a distance of about half a mile from the ship, it was apparent that the disturbance was roughly circular in shape, about 1,000 to 1,500 feet in diameter. That doesn't sound like a fish. The pulsations could now be seen to be caused by a revolving motion of the entire pattern about a rather ill-defined center, with streaks of light, like the beams of searchlights, rotating outward from the center and revolving in a counterclockwise direction, like the spokes of a gigantic wheel. As well may be imagined, the effect was weird and impressive in the extreme, with the vessel seemingly to occupy the center of a huge pinwheel whose spokes consisted of fluorescent luminous revolving rapidly about the vessel of a hub. It was my impression that the actual illumination was caused by natural fluorescence in the water, periodically stimulated by regular waves of energy, the shape of the pinwheel. Secondly, these underwater lights appeared to have a definite point of origin. Third, this point of origin invariably seemed to be moving. So it wasn't a stationary thing. Moving on to page 106, and again I'm only reading my highlighted portions, as you know how I do it. I'm just trying to give you the gist of what's in this book and some sidebar data, so we can try to formulate what's going on here in 2015 with this New Age, New World Order UFO sightings on MUFON on the internet you can go check out right now, and all kinds of weird goings on the world. What does it have to do with today? I'm a practical man. That's why I'm doing this research. What does this have to do with today? What are we supposed to think? We are left then with the third, last, and most unpleasant notion, that the source of the triggering energy is mechanical. A mechanical source could account for the regular beams, the regular width, regular spaced, revolving at a regular speed, hub not the brightest spot, hubs moving on their own, beams changing from straight to curve with increased speed, slowing down, beams appearing apparently on the surface, just under it, deep down and even sinking. Charles Fort first suggested that these sources of energy were what he called constructions. He also called OFFs, objects seen floating in the sky, now better known to us as flying saucers. So OSFs, objects seen floating in the sky, or UFOs. So I read that, and of course you know me, I ordered the book. That's quite a big, thick book. Almost 4 fingers. So I've got some reading to do here. The books of Charles Fort. I'm sure this will be interesting. I'll give you an example of what's in here. I got this at a used book site for just a couple dollars. The Book of the Damned, New Lands, L.O., Wild Talents, as you can see here. So it makes you wonder about all the weirdness this man documented back in copyright 1919. So he's referenced a lot by a lot of investigators. Suspicions, sightings, all kinds of weird stuff. The Book of Charles Fort. So when I read one book like Invisible Residence and the author references other books, I go get the book. And I read the book. And then I do videos about the book. Okay. So Fort came up with the term objects seen floating in the sky, OSFs. As we call them today, UFOs. By a nimble juxtaposition of reports and cases, Fort tried to point out the significance of all manner of fiery objects allegedly seen plunging into, rushing out of the sea. Remember that. Flying and plunging into the sea, coming out of the sea and flying off into space. And he published his book in 1919. He never quite says the extraterrestrial devices, mechanisms, craft, either robotic or manned, by intelligent entities, constantly come and go to and from the planet, and use the bottom of the sea as opposed to the oceans as their landing fields and outposts. But he does hint that the masses of oily substances reported floating near these light displays could be oil or other waste from such machines. There he stops, but let us continue this speculation as a mere intellectual exercise, of course. So as you can imagine, I look forward to reading this big, thick book. Seeing what hidden evidence is in there. Because I don't trust the writers of today, so that's why I do book reviews. As I keep saying, to put some believability into the information you get so you can decide what the heck is going on in this reality. Why would the plankton give off light in the shape of a rimless wheel? Page 109, Invisible Residence. What sort of stimulating force do we know that could induce a pattern of radiating beams? A source of stimuli that fills the requirements very nicely is underwater sound. If there are two closely adjacent sources of sound at the hub, an interference pattern will be set up. In the radical zones where the sonic waves from both sources are in phase, they will reinforce each other, stimulating the plankton to emit light. In the alternating zones, there will be sonic waves out of phase, cancel each other out. There will be no luminescent stimulating vibrations. And that's a fine explanation. And I'll believe that explanation. But it doesn't justify and explain objects coming from the atmosphere, space, plunging into the ocean, right in front of ships like the Mayflower, and then ships coming up out of the ocean, leaving a lot of water splashing down, and flying off into space. What's with that? First, it is fully in accord with the notion that the beams pass through the ships, since their hulls would transmit the vibrations exciting the plankton on the far side. So that's a theory. Since the wheels of light are so large, the sound must be intense to disturb so large a volume of sea. So let's take a look at a couple of these sightings by captains of boats, ships. The E.L. Moss on the HMS Bulldog, 1875. May 15th, 1879, Commander Pringle of the HMS Vulture in the Persian Gulf saw a revolving wheel of light well underwater, centered east, but another wheel to the west revolving in the contrary direction, shafts 25 feet broad, space between 100 feet, traveling about 85 miles per hour, lasting 35 minutes. 1880, R.E. Harris, commander of the H.A.H.N. Company's steamship, Shanahara, at Malabar, saw unidentified stuff floating on surface, waves of brilliant light with space between. 1891, China Sea, shafts or lances of light that had the appearance of rays or searchlights under the water. 1901, Captain Ho Season on the steamship Kilwa in the Persian Gulf saw vast ripples of light for 15 minutes and then they died out. 1906, Mr. Douglas Carnegie on ship in the Gulf of Oman saw a bank of quiescent fluorescence when within 20 yards shafts of brilliant light across the ship's bow at 60 to 200 miles per hour. 1907, Mr. S.C. Patterson, second officer of the P&O SS Delta in the Malacca Strait, saw shafts which seemed to move around the center like spokes of a wheel. 1909, Captain Gave on the Danish ship Bintang in the Strait of Malacca saw a vast revolving wheel of light flat upon the water, long arms issued from the center, around which the whole system appeared to rotate. So there's people who scoured the old newspapers and Lloyd's of London insurance records and other places to come up with these stories, authors. And they cite these references, like this one here. August 13th, 1910, Captain Breyer on the Dutch ship Valentine in the South China Sea saw a rotation of flashes like a horizontal wheel turning rapidly just above the water. And the citation, that's the little number next to the information, tells you where the information came from, and it has citation 173. You'll see next to my finger. So let's look in the back of this book and see what citation 173 says. Again, it's all about credibility, reliability. So that would have been 173. That would have been Charles Fort book, as you can see here. Again, next to my finger here. 173, and you go to the top and it says Fort. So when these authors write these books, they read other books and make a book called Invisible Residence, for example. And they use citations to tell where they got the information, which is how I acquired my entire collection of books. When I see authors make a statement, I go buy the book and read it. And when that author makes a statement, I go buy the book and read that book. So let's do a pause for the cause. Look at something a little exciting. Now, in previous UFO videos, I've shown you some of my UFO books. And I told you I had more UFO books, and that I would show them. So I thought this might be a good time to look at some other books. More, not the same ones we already looked at in my previous videos. Robert Eminger, UFOs Past, Present, and Future. Behind the Flying Saucers, Frank Scully. Whitley Strieber's Hidden Agenda, Dark Object. Behind the Flying Saucer Mystery, George Amansky. Is Something Up There, Dale White. It's not easy to get these books. You can see the flying saucer on the top of this one. Looks like the Empire State Building, doesn't it? Is it a plane, a weather balloon, a meteor, or is it a visitor from outer space? And let's see here. Flying Saucers from Outer Space. Did I have that one already? This one would be Major Donald Keyhole. I don't have the cover that came with it. Copyright 1953. Flying Saucers from Outer Space. Keyhole was a major player after the World War II. Alien Encounter, Behind the UFO, Chuck Missler and Mark Eastman. Looks like a rather newer book. Should be an interesting read when I read it and make a video. Obviously, I can't make a video on all of them. 1997. Okay, UFOs Explained at Last. The Science of Extraterrestrials. I think I'd like to read this one. Published 2006. Alright, Leslie Kean, UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. (2010). Witnessed. The True Story of the Brooklyn Bridge UFO Abductions. Brooklyn Bridge. Bud Hopkins, he's pretty well known. A convincing case that the invasion from outer space is not fiction but fact. Predicts that the human race is in for some large surprises by the year 2000. Well, that's come and gone. But we have had a lot of surprises, 9/11 and many other things, that are very suspect. Wonder who's behind the whole thing. This was published in 1996. UFO Crash at Roswell, A Genesis of a Modern Myth. Benson Saylor, Charles Ziegler, and Charles B. Moore. Published in 1997 by the Smithsonian Institute. That's a little suspect for me. I'm not a big fan of the Smithsonian Institute because I am aware that when things get discovered like giant skeletons or gold in the Grand Canyon in the cave, the Smithsonian, an arm of the government or the secret powers, I believe, sweep in and scoop up everything and shut people up. Like the secret vaults in the Vatican. So, with that little show, I thought I would show you something that's a little bizarre. But then, that's my videos. I don't know if people know how to use a pendulum and know about psychic research. So I'm going to show you something and let you practice and try for yourself. So I take a book. Let's say this book. Is Something There, Dale White? And I put the paper here for your education. I don't need the paper. But it has a plus and minus on it. Now, the plus is the guy's telling the truth, and the negative, the guy is not telling the truth. Is that simple enough to understand? This is a pendulum. And it can go one way or the other. Go towards the positive. See that? Go towards the negative. And you think it's me doing it. I'm just telling my mind to do it, and my mind does it. So what I want to know on this book is the author being honest. Looks like a yes. I'll check it here on my lap. Is this, give me the truth on this author. Alright, so Dale White seems to be telling the truth when he wrote this book. Is there something out there? Alright, we got George Admansky. Behind the Flying Saucer Mystery. Remember, a lot of these authors work for the government. They were doing some kind of New World Order, changing the way society thinks about God and demons and everything. They were creating the UFO thing. So it seems like Dale White was being sincere with his book. Behind the Flying Saucer Mystery, give me the truth on this book. It says on this book, a complete negative. Give me George Admansky's will. And I'm getting a negative in his gut, and I'm getting a negative. It's a psychic thing. So I'm going to set George Admansky as negative. The author was writing something to fool people. Don Ledger and Chris Stiles, Dark Object. Give me the will of this author. Clearly negative. The gut. So there's a highest power and a spiritual power that you test for with a pendulum. And you can get a pendulum yourself. So there's 2 negatives and 1 positive. Just saying, don't believe me. But I can hold this pendulum up over my hand that you can see. And give me the polarity of my hand. And it's going in a positive direction. And if my hand is like a battery, the other side should be negative. And it goes in the other direction. This is all dowsers find water, psychics find lost people. And we've done this in my previous videos. Psychic detectives working for the forest rangers, finding people lost in the woods. Police officers trying to find murderers. So I thought we'd play with this with books. Behind the Flying Saucers, Frank Scully. Frank Scully's will. Well, that says positive. His gut, positive. So Frank Scully seems to be sincere with Dale White. Robert, because you know, somebody can write a book just to get it published and make some money. They could fabricate stuff, lie for the government. Some people say Stitchins, Zechariah Stitchins, who did all the stuff on Nibiru and the Anunnaki, was working for the CIA to create all that. As we are well aware with the Freemasons, remember this series is Freemasonry and Satanism, are viciously opposed to the Christian church and religion. And we get into that as we go along on other issues. That's why I'm trying to exhaust this UFO alien thing to see where it fits in the whole scheme of things with the New World Order and New Age. And Neil Patrick Harris on the Oscars the other day, this is March 1st, 2015, getting on stage in his underwear, which is a satanic ritual, if you know anything about the Kabbalah and other satanic activities, Hollywood, Zionism, Illuminati. And a lot of people don't know what the Illuminati is, and as I continue to research, things become more clearer. The Catholic Church obviously focuses on Christianity, Jesus Christ. And of course, the Muslims focus on Muhammad, and the Buddhists focus on Buddha, and the Hindus on their god, Shiva, and other gods. Illuminati focuses on Lucifer. So I want to take the mystery out of that It's just a Luciferian religion, the mark of the beast, 666. Coming to a neighborhood near you soon. But what do aliens and UFOs have to do with this? Robert Eminiger, however you say his name, Eminiger. UFOs past and present. Give me this man's will. And I'm getting a complete negative. And his gut. And you can go get a book on pendulums and dowsers, and it tells you how to do this kind of stuff. I used it to check water and vitamins and my health and stuff like that. You can put it over a woman and see if she's going to have a male child or a female child. The ancient Indians and lots of people have been doing this for thousands of years. I can do it to tell whether the author is telling the truth or not when he writes the book. His will. Does he have a positive will towards good? Does he have a negative will and he doesn't care about people? So here we have flying saucers from outer space, Holt. Who is Holt? This would be Major Donald Keyhoe. Now this is a big one here. I don't want to find this guy as negative. But let's go. Give me Mr. Keyhoe's will. Are you deceiving me? No. Keyhoe's will. His gut. So he had good intentions. 3 positives and 3 negatives so far. Alien encounters with Jack Mincer and Mark Eastman. Let's just go with Chuck Mincer. Chuck Mincer on this book. Eastman. So it looks like that they, to me, courtesy little check. Let's do Charles Fort, the famous author. And assuming this psychic stuff is real. I practice a lot, so I'm trying to get a firmer conclusion. Give me Charles Fort's will. And his gut. That would be your higher consciousness and your lower consciousness. Charles Fort seems like a sincere guy. Let's get into something interesting. Roswell. This book, The Will. Oh, Roswell might be a fake here. It's going off to the negative. I'll put it on my lap and just do it with my mind. The truth in this book, please. It says this book is a fabrication by the powers that be. It's got Benson Saylor, Charles Ziegler, Charles B. Moore. And I ask my mind if I'm being deceived, and apparently with the higher powers in the spirit world, if you they can lie to you, but if you ask if they're lying, they have to tell the truth. From my research. So again, the will of this book, and this certainly seems negative. So is Roswell a fabrication to fool us? Moving on to Bud Hopkins. I've never seen this being done on a video before. And you thought I read these books and I believe everything. Not on your life. Bud Hopkins. Negative will. Am I being deceived? No. The gut. It's the true story of the Brooklyn Bridge abductions. Indicates it's negative. Somebody could be fabricating something. Does this stuff really work? I don't know. Do I think it works? Yeah. Leslie Keane, his will. We got a positive. Now, why are some of these books giving me positives and negatives if it doesn't work? I don't know which ones are which. I'm just trusting my subconscious mind to do this. I'll give you another example. There's positive is good, negative is bad. Should I jump off the roof? It's going towards the negative. Would I like to meet a pretty girl and go out to dinner? It's going towards the positive. I'm asking my mind. I'm not doing this with the pendulum with my hand. You can go get a gold ring and a string or a lug nut or a pendulum and try it yourself, as I show people all the time. And they'll hold the thing up and they'll ask a question and it will give them the answer and they'll go, oh my God, I'm not moving it. UFOs, Leslie Kean. Another propaganda book, possibly, says negative. And Leslie Kean's got negative. Eric Julian, UFOs explained at last. His will. Negative again. His gut. And am I being deceived? So I have here 3, 6, 7 negatives, 4 positive books. So let's get to Ivan Sanderson now that we've done that. Ivan Sanderson's will. Positive. When he wrote the book, he was doing his best to tell the truth, his gut. Amazing, you think? So I suppose I should do that to all of my UFO books. So let's just finish Ivan Sanderson. I'm not doing the whole book. It has up to 200 and something pages, and I'm going to stop here at page 112. But just to read two more sightings. At the nearest northeast point of Groote Inlet, West Australia, wherever that is, shadow in center of lights rotated clockwise, causing the lights to pulsate. Alright. So anyways, Ivan Sanderson says, thus I am afraid I have had to resort back, though most reluctantly, in his analysis of these undersea lights, to the notion that these appearances may be caused by some kind of machines. So that's his analysis. Ivan Sanderson, respected author, and turned positive by my pendulum psychic check. Prior to unearthing the material that I have put on record in chapters 1 through 6, I considered this quite balmy, but if this is a submarine civilization living on Earth, which have been here all along, which is beginning to become part of my conclusion, that we're not dealing with entities, civilizations far advanced than we humans, from outer space visiting us, I feel that it's becoming fairly obvious that there are some intelligent entities that have been on Earth all along, are part of the secret mysteries of even Babylon, the occults, the Illuminati, the satanic religions with all their magic. Think about it. You watch the cartoon or the TV show with the mirror on the wall, or the little poem when you were a kid, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all? And the glass mirror with a face would appear. That would seem like magic. I know what you're thinking. Rick, what are you talking about? But hey, we have flat screens today that you could put on the wall that back then would have seemed like magic. Get it? Got it? What do the powers that be that run our world, hence the series of videos, Freemasonry and Satanism, what do they know? What has been hidden from the human race? What is going on right now? Why are they sky spraying us? A HAARP system ripples in the sky. Threats of nuclear war from Russia, China, and all kinds of murder and mayhem in the Middle East. Shipping all the resources of the United States food supply and manufacturing to other countries so that we are dependent on them. The New World Order, the New Age, the changing to a one-world religion, even as described by the Pope at the Vatican at this moment. What does it have to do with residents from outer space or aliens or ships? Have there been entities on this planet all along? And are some of them living under the ocean and in mountains and in the earth? I'm just trying to figure it out. You know, This old technology and the burning of witches and magicians and magic throughout history is well known, documented. Cloning, half horse, half man, all kinds of freaky creatures throughout history. Have they been here all along? Does the government know it? Have they made deals? Are we being deceived? Like the pendulum says, half these books or more are deceptions. Are they? So he says that the bottoms of our seas and oceans are being used by intelligent entities with advanced machines. One can but be forced to accept the notion that their scanning and other devices might activate the noctilular or other remarkable manners. Some of the unidentified aerial objects could themselves be living entities, that others could be constructions devised upon and running on biological rather than mechanical principles, and that some could have been manufactured by some living entities who may or may not travel in them. In any one of these three cases, any that prefer to land, operate, or reside under the water might well produce effects on our physical and biological phenomena of the nature described in this chapter. Just go back here. What next chapter is the Bermuda Triangle. I'm not going to go through all this. Just showing you what's in the book. Planes vanishing over Germany, Tunisia. It could, of course, have been much to do with related matters, such as the disappearances of grounded solid objects like barns and people. However, we will endeavor to confine ourselves to matters maritime in this department. So there's more interesting stuff in this book. Descriptions of ships disappearing, where they went. Get Invisible Resident. Seems like he's an honest author. With that said, it's time for another look at NICAP. Interestingly enough, I have the 1963 edition of UFO Investigator, which would be interesting to try Mr. Pendulum on that. Now that you know which way is positive and negative, I don't need to put the piece of paper. The will on this author. So these people seem to have been sincere publishing this document. It says positive. I think this would have been, Kehoe would have been in charge of the NICAP at that time, the main officer. So looking at this document might prove to be interesting. One thing about it that is interesting, apparently they had financial problems when they had these things coming out every 2 months. Price of stamps, paper, printing, publishing, and all that. Takes manpower and money. So what they did here, and I collect these old documents, they're not easy to get, nor are they cheap. But apparently they slipped 2 issues in one. So they just stapled the whole thing together. So instead of 8 pages, looks like 16 pages. So we're just going to go through 2 months. But what's interesting, this is 1963, when Kennedy was president, who was killed in 1963. In November 22nd, which I thought was an interesting date. That's 11/22/1963. So what were they thinking and what was going on back then? NASA to probe Mars moon mystery. Space probes are being prepared to determine whether the Mars moon Phobos actually is a huge orbiting space base, according to a high official NASA, National Aeronautics Space and Administration. So they were concerned about sending a satellite there or anything else to crash into the planet, in case it might be, or in this case, a moon, Phobos. After stating that Phobos might be artificial, this is 1963 now, Wilson said Mars probe would contain spectroscopic equipment to determine whether Phobos gives off as absorption lines of aluminum. If so, he said this would be a most interesting discovery. Top priority, search for space in life. The other article here. The Space Science Board has dramatically urged an intensive speed up in the search for otherworld beings. Back in 1963, just before Kennedy was killed, who had announced and was trying to expose the secret government behind the scenes and the UFO issue. And it is suspect that they say that in Dealey Plaza, which is a Freemasonic plaza with an obelisk, Freemason and Satanism is the name of this series. And that's where Kennedy was killed, was on a Freemasonic site. Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Right there with the obelisk. The phallic symbol for Osiris, whose son, the all-seeing eye, is on the U.S. dollar bill with the pyramid. You don't think my investigation is in line? I think it is. All right. The discovery of life on other planets will have an enormous and lasting impact on the people of every race and culture. So in 1963, were they trying to change people's mindsets from God and Jesus to know God and know Jesus and aliens and the New World Order that is coming that they talked about and planned? Even Albert Pike of the book Morals and Dogma that we've gone over many times, book's pretty thick. Said he got his material from a spirit guide. When people see the aliens or the craft, which are they spirits? Is it a mesmerism? Is it hypnotism? Is it mind control? But when people have, like in Siege, up in Connecticut and New York that we went over, Night Siege, in 1983 and 84, when they had those gigantic V-shaped craft in the sky, and it would start to fly away, the person would think, "Don't go away, I want to see you," and the craft would come towards the person. And as they got closer, as you would expect, the person would freak out, get scared, and for some reason, the craft would change its mind and then go away. Apparently, it didn't like it when the humans got scared. Are these interdimensional beings spiritual beings? Lots of questions, few answers. But I think if we've been reading all these books, examining the material on the internet, videos, I think something starts to come a little clearer. And it certainly does seem like there are some kind of other entities living on this earth, operating behind the scenes. As a man from Serbia emailed me the other day, that he calls them the shadows. A doctor. UFO investigator, page 2. NICAP Board of Governors, Dr. Marcus Bark, University of Iowa, Reverend Albert Baller, Robbins Memorial Church, Greenfield, Massachusetts. Colonel James Byron, 3, U.S. Air Force, Dr. Earl Douglas, Mr. Frank Edwards, Colonel Emerson, U.S. Army Reserve, Mr. Dewey Fournette, formerly Major, U.S. Air Force, UFO Project Monitor, Mr. J.B. Hartraff, President, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, Admiral H.B. Knowles, Professor Charles Manley, astrophysicist, Dr. Charles Oliver, President, American Media Society, and as you can see, a whole page of talkings about the NICAP people, and Phobos on this side. Senator Proxmire praises NICAP evidence. Let's put this in context. 1963. We're supposed to have gone to the moon in 69 and 68, 70, which a lot of people now, including myself, believe was a total hoax. One big reason is the Van Allen belt outside the Earth, or encircles the Earth, that protects us humans from cosmic radiations and microwave radiations like a microwave oven. Think about it. You know, you go 100 miles up and you have atmosphere. That's a lot of atmosphere for cosmic rays and other dangerous radiations to come through the Earth down to the surface where humans, 5-6 feet tall, trees, plants, and animals are protected by miles high of atmosphere. Besides a intense magnetic belt called the Van Allen belt, you get outside of that and you're totally exposed to the cosmic radiations, emissions from the sun and space, which are extremely harmful. And it has been said that it would take a couple feet thick of lead to protect a human in space. So I'm sure that the Apollo spacecraft, if you ever looked at the pictures of them, and I have them, they look like tin cans, and even the cables and connectors have little cotter pins, and no way it could take that kind of cosmic radiation. Secondly, if you get on the moon with no atmosphere, which is the air would be being struck by the rays from the sun, would be more like boiling water. The air conditioning unit you would need to have on your back would be so huge. And how would the air conditioner work? If you know how air conditioner works, it's a transfer unit. It transfers the outside air from the inside air. With no outside oxygen or air on the moon, there would be no place to transfer the heat. So you would burn up like a crispy critter on the moon if you were walking around in that flimsy suit. And they say another thing, that the Apollo aircraft kept cool because it slowly rotated. Well, if you ever barbecued a turkey or anything, ham hog, roast beef, you rotate it to cook it. If there was no way to cool it, you would have cooked the astronauts inside. Those are just a couple reasons. Besides that, I was an electronic engineering technician from 79 to 89 at a major aerospace company. 79 now, 10 years later. And the technology back then, transistors and all that, was quite flaky, subject to failure, and all these crafts, numerous Apollo craft went back and forth successfully with that technology. Unbelievable. Senator Proxmire praises NICAP evidence. Senator William Proxmire has asked the Defense Department for a full and complete report on NICAP's outline of the UFO evidence. UFO censorship silences police. See, this is why we're talking about lies and deception. Charles, Chief of Police William Brigham, Keene, New Hampshire, had disclosed that security classifications now prohibit the release of any UFO reports in the possession of his department, unless there is some unknown reason for specifically restricting the Keene Police Department. This censorship step presumably will apply to police in general. Silencing the Keene Police was revealed by Chief Brigham on March 19th in answering a query by Joyce Steele, NICAP member, about any UFO information in the police department's hands. In a letter to Mrs. Steele, the chief stated, "With regard to your request for department information relative to unidentified flying objects, I regret that I am unable to supply you with the information you request. Such material is classified as security information and is not available." Well, so they might be fabricating some of these books, according to my pendulum. Lying to the people, fooling the people, deceiving the people, and they don't want the police to give out information to reporters. Or NICAP. Asteroid mining, that's been in the news now. Why is it in this 1963 pamphlet? Asteroid mining. Can you see them trying to land on an asteroid and mining it? How crazy or stupid do they think we humans are? Are most humans that crazy and stupid to believe this stuff? The nearer asteroids could be mined for precious metals. Also for chemicals that might be used as fuel for interplanetary rockets. It's pretty optimistic of them back then, wasn't it? Private pilot sights mystery object near Washington. A strange, fast-moving object flying near Washington, D.C. was sighted on February 7th by Carl Chambers of Linden, PA, pilot and photographer, and John P. Campbell, reporter on the Williamsport Sun-Gazette. The FFA tower in Washington Airport said another pilot had confirmed the UFO sighting. After a discussion with NICAP's director at Harrisburg, Chambers and Campbell filed detailed reports. Well, let's hope they didn't file them with the Brigham Keene, New Hampshire Police Department, because then nobody would ever see them, according to them. The UFO had a yellow-white glow, was first seen from their private plane at an altitude of 5,500 feet near Charlottesville, Virginia. At one time, the object hovered off to their right wing and then moved rapidly under the plane and above the plane. A few minutes later, as it was seen 35 miles south of Washington, seemingly hovering over a defense missile site. Oh my God. Half a minute after this, the witnesses said it reappeared 10 to 15 minutes north of the Capitol. Isn't that interesting? A UFO was hovering over the missile site. And in Ivan Sanderson's book, we're talking about civilizations, high advanced, might be living under our oceans. Do you suppose that those advanced civilizations, if they're there with flying craft living in our oceans and in mountains and places around the earth, might be concerned with all the nuclear bombs that we would be manufacturing? I would guess they would be. I would be if I was them. Here we blew up 2 of them in Japan. How many more will we blow up? Will they annihilate the whole United States like the threats we're hearing from Russia right now? And China, and back and forth nasty news with Obama and Putin. And the Zionists wanting to nuke, preemptive strike on Iran. Where will it end? An indicative speed of over 5,000 miles an hour. During the rest of the observation period, the UFO maneuvered at an estimated speed of over 2,000 knots when Chambers reported the Washington National Airport. The FFA traffic controller told him that another pilot in the vicinity had radioed a similar report confirming their description of the unknown object. Continuing on. Rocket or spaceship sighted by ship's officer. The Navy Hydrographic Office notice to mariners. I guess that's a magazine they have. Navy's Notice to Mariners. November 10, 1962. Contains an interesting report from Second Officer J. Connors of the American SS Smith Tourist, Captain C. Nelson Master. On October 3rd, 1962, the SS Smith Tourist was on passage from Freeport, Bahamas to Santa Morocco at 7:45 General Mountain Time, 1:45 Eastern Time. Second Officer Connors sighted what appeared to be a rocket or spaceship in the sky. The unknown space device streaked west to east across the sky. Okay, I can see them seeing a rocket. Second Officer Connors reported leaving a trail as bright as the sun and the same color. Back in '62, we probably had rockets. No U.S. or Soviet launchings, according to the records, could explain this sighting. Page 4. Remember, these are 8-page reports. I'm going to try to be brief and sum this up. I got one more document I want to look at to end this video that's quite exciting. A little bit of information from Bill Cooper. Air Guard Chase reported, the following important sighting by the Air Force Air National Guard pilot had been released to NICAP on condition that the name will not be revealed since he is still active in the Air Guard. UFO seen as rocket veers off course. A strange flying object was sighted over the Atlantic coast of Florida on the night of March 18th, a few moments before a Minuteman rocket launched from Cape Canaveral veered off course. So they saw a flying object nearby when the rocket veered off course. News management, flight aids, UFO cause. Hawaii, UFOs still unexplained. I'm not reading all of this. Although I did think it would be interesting if I could get a collection of all of these NICAP reports here and put them together in a book to get to people. That would be... People would like to have this material. The sighting of a fast-moving UFO over Hawaii on March 11th, which baffled jet pilots, FFA control tower operators, and thousands of residents, still has not been explained. Is there any life on Earth? According to my opinion, with the recent Oscars and Neil Patrick Harris getting on stage in his underwear and nobody getting outraged, I am beginning to wonder if there is any intelligent life on Earth. Imagine if you were having a birthday party or a high school graduation, college graduation for your kid, and you invited your neighbors and your friends, and then somebody showed up in their underwear. I think somebody would be getting a boot up the keister and throwing out the door. Just my opinion. Okay, here, Venezuela UFO film examined by U.S. Air Force. Page 5. A moving picture showing 2 or more UFOs recently filmed from an airplane in Ayatipe, Venezuela, has been reported by NICAP by Dr. Ascul Lundoco, our advisor in Caracas, Venezuela. A detailed report was secured by the U.S. Air Force Attaché. The film was taken in December 1962 by Mr. Ali Rafael Diaz, who was flying over Angel Falls with his family and guest. Mr. Diaz was photographing the falls using an 8mm camera on color film when a luminous object rose from the base of a mountain, ascended vertically at high speed. When the UFO cleared the mountaintop, it passed in front of the cumulus clouds, indicating its proximity to the observers, and also that it was not an astronomical object. So again, we got your Ivan Sanderson's that there's been, apparently, for hundreds of thousands of years, according to history, and even etched in stone on ancient hieroglyphics in Egypt and South America, as we saw from the gold silhouettes in the other books that I have read, it seems that Earth is populated by intelligent beings that have been operating in the background. Space wars likely, Air Force General says. So the Air Force General says space wars are likely. I believe we have got the wrong people in charge. It's president and congressmen and senators and leaders of our countries all over this planet. They seem bent on destroying us. They are destroying us with the sky spraying and the HAARP system, HAARP, the electromagnetic radiation, the increased monitoring of everybody 24/7 by supercomputers, your phone. Even Samsung warned its subscribers to be careful what they do and say in front of the TV, which may be seeing and monitoring them. Us, me, you. Can't make this stuff up. Some space races are undoubtedly far superior to ours. According to Brigadier General John McDavid, U.S. Air Force Director of Communication Electronic for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he's concerned that some of these UFO aliens are smarter than us. Ooh, we got a little Hitlerian thing going on here. Hitler and his Supermen. Super astronauts. You can't make this stuff up. According to present plans, the first Earth astronauts who land on a far distant world will be a special breed. Some types being considered would be so different that they would give other world beings a false and perhaps dangerous picture of Earth's inhabitants. So they're going to send modified humans out in space. One disturbing plan, backed by some scientists, would surgically transform spacemen into semi-robots. Tied in with surgery would be chemical mind changers, a drug process urged by some researchers to create a new controlled personalities. The resulting cyborg genetic organism is described by Dr. Tolly Freeman, North American aviation scientist, who strongly opposes the plan. You think? Can't make this stuff up. Other world communications. In trying to communicate with extraterrestrial creatures, the biggest obstacle will be technical. You think? Alright, let me finish this up. UFO programs. Got a lot of stuff going on back then in '63. Lots of TV channel, Lexington, Kentucky, Philadelphia. Alright, page 8 on this particular report. UFO expert appointed to Spacecraft Center. New series planned. A series of 4 articles on the significance of US UFOs is being developed for future issues. Economy measures because of the postage rate increase, the gap between our income and expenses. NICAP has financial problems. Board member corrects Mesler, who's trying to say UFOs are all a hoax, fabricated by NICAP. Alright, so, what the important news here is an interesting thing. John Dewey speech in 1917. Think of this now. From our research, apparently some intelligent beings have been on this earth all along, possibly. Coming in and out of the ocean, building ancient monuments. The following quote is from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Division of Intercourse and Education, forward by Elijah or Elihu Root, publication number, The Imperial Japanese Mission, 1917. Look this up. It's an interesting perspective on the UFO alien thing. John Dewey, professor of philosophy at the Columbia University, who was the next speaker, was listened to with great intenseness. He said, "Someone remarked that the best way to unite all the nations on this globe would be an attack from some other planet." 1917. In the face of such an alien enemy, people would respond with a sense of unity, of interest and purpose. Now think about that. Mr. Pendulum of mine says a lot of these authors are lying, creating propaganda. I mean, can we believe that? I hold the pendulum, I don't know. 1917, this guy says this. Someone remarked that the best way to unite all nations on this globe would be an attack from some other planet. In the face of such an enemy, people would respond with a sense of the unity of interest and purpose. Freemasonry and Satanism is this series. Albert Pike wrote the Bible for the Freemasons in the late 1880s, 1870s, before 1900. He said he got his material from a spirit guide. This is all occultic. Helena Blavatsky, Bailey, all the occult books, magic, they got their information from spirit guides. Think about that. It's the secret societies we're dealing with. They know things and dealing with things that we don't know. Communication with the other side, psychic research, meditations, seances, remote viewing. In order to get the people to believe in an alien threat or any threat for that matter, according to Mr. John Dewey's speech in 1917. It has to seem plausible, credible, or at least possible in people's minds. Well, I don't mean to keep dragging this in here, but if these books are fake, are they planting the information in people's minds? Star Trek. The series. Its creator was said, look this up, to have, a lot of the Hollywood is into the Kabbalah. Everybody knows that. They're into Satanism. The Church of Satan is the fastest growing church based out of LA. The occult. But anyways, they said that the storylines for the Star Trek series came from the author going into a meditative state and communicating with the other side. Albert Pike, Freemasonry and Satanism, talking to his masters. The spirit world. Is it a demonic spirit world? In order to get the people to believe in an alien threat, according to John Dewey, 1917, look this up, do not believe me. Not doing me a bit of good if you believe me on any of this stuff. Do your homework. I'm trying to say that there are forces operating behind the scenes, like those Georgia USA Guidestones, that say they want a population of 500 million worldwide, which tells me that 6 billion people have to be killed. And maybe there are critters or aliens or some kind of intelligence that live under the ocean that have made a deal with our governments to dispose of us. Is it possible? Well, to get people's believe in alien threat, or any threat for that matter, it has to be seen plausible, credible, and at least possible in people's minds. And so the people's minds have been inundated with imaginary aliens found in books, we've just seen them, movies, television, including salient points in this article. So, manufacturing an artificial threat to unite people against a common enemy. This would be how the powers that be, the Satanists, Illuminati, Zionists, secret Freemasonry, Rosicrucians, occultic, satanic, Luciferian, Satan worshippers, witchcraft, magicians. I know I go on. Want a one world order where people get a little chip in them and they monitor them 24/7. They know when they come and go. They can turn you off and kill you with that chip. Don't make any mistake about it. Manufacturing an artificial threat to unite people against a common enemy. And the recent passage of legislation the other day, recently, hours ago, to neutralize the internet. So if you're watching my videos and you think any of this stuff I'm telling you is true, you might want to, or worth your time to investigate. I suspect that this material could disappear with the FCC controlling the internet and the government doing what it's doing and doesn't want all this information to be exposed. Mr. Cooper was at one time an intelligence insider at the United States military. Bill Cooper, William Cooper, beware a pale horse. Go on the internet if I were to give you any advice and look up Bill Cooper and watch some of his videos on the internet. He talks about exposing Babylon and the mystery behind it, the Luciferian thing, the alien thing, the secret government plan for a new world order. My videos are to help get people moving along, to have some opinion of what's true and what's not true. Because as we all know, a lot of people don't know what to think anymore. And if you read the Protocols of Zion and the report from Iron Mountain, available online, you will see in those books they planned on causing huge amounts of befuddlement, confusion, Enough to make people go mad and crazy, turn into zombies, shut down. And they're doing a darn good job of that insane propaganda on almost any issue. Plagues, Ebola, Planet X crashing into the Earth, earthquakes, Yellowstone exploding, EMFs coming from the sun, attack from Russia, Mexicans coming here getting tax benefits, riling up the people, gay and homosexual propaganda upsetting other people. The Arabs, all the Muslims and Arabs must be evil demons. And so on and so on. Food supplies, water supplies, pollution, global warming, global cooling. I could go on here for days and weeks with all the insanities that's in the news. Salmon dying in the north. Polar bears having to ship some ice to them because they're getting too warm. There's interesting people's paintings describing all this stuff. If you look up on the internet, global warming and images, you'll see all the artistic expressions of this stuff. One of the things Mr. Cooper eventually found out was that when he was working for the intelligence of the government now, was that the powers were looking for a substitute for war, an enemy to fight. Are they fabricating the aliens to be an enemy to fight, to round up the people to voluntarily submit into slavery in a New World Order, like the movie Hunger Games or Divergent? Alright, so the people would unite and fight against the common enemy. The deceived people of the world would unite and fight the enemy. Pollution is one of the things, intentionally to pollute the earth, although it would take a while to become sufficiently menacing to mankind so that we would all submit to our masters to take care of us when they're the ones polluting the earth intentionally. Dictators, it would include a fabrication of a fabricated enemy. Let's see, they fabricated it as Saddam Hussein, they fabricated it as that president of Egypt, they fabricated it as Gaddafi in Libya, they fabricated it as many people in Central and South America that they killed, they fabricated it now on Assad, the president of Syria, they're fabricating it on the president of Iran, they're fabricating it on the president of Russia now, Korea, China. They're keeping people really confused, upset, in fear. All of this may sound far-fetched, but as you read this article and see the video of former U.S. President Ronald Reagan saying that he thought that an alien invasion might bring the people of the world together, and you will see that it is not far-fetched. Like George Bush Sr., Jr., the Pope, and Obama, and Clinton. And who hasn't said it, that a new world order is coming? It seems that these people have been planning this for a long time. That's what it says here on that document that I encourage you to go look up. John Dewey. Speech in 1917. This guy wrote a letter, Albert Pike, in the late 1880s to a friend over there in Europe, describing 3 world wars that would be necessary to create the New World Order. It's all biblical. I'm going to end this here shortly. Mr. Cooper went back in time to those who wrote about the methods of achieving world government. The manufacture of an artificial alien threat was there. He came across the comments of John Dewey, father of today's progressive education, made in 1917. So there you have it. Quote from Mr. Cooper, and I'll end this now. Taken from rewardinheavenblogspot.com. Many years ago, I had access to a set of documents that I eventually realized was the plan for the destruction of the United States of America in the formation of a socialist totalitarian world government. The plan was contained within a set of top-secret documents with the title Majestic 12. Within Majestic 12 is Operation Majority. justifying the plan by presenting an extraterrestrial alien threat as the reason for the necessity for world government. When I saw Operation Majority while serving in the Navy, I believed the alien threat was real, just like everybody else. It was not until I had performed many years of research that I was able to fully understand exactly what it was that I had seen. And with that, I'll end this and say this. William Cooper was working on a ship. And out of the sea, one of his descriptions, a flying saucer came out of the sea. Flew towards this ship. Circled the ship. As if playing with them, vying to get attention. And then flew away. Does that sound like they were trying to make sure that Mr. Cooper believed in UFO and aliens? If it was just a UFO coming up out of the ship and flew away, that would be one thing. But if you read these cases time after time in my videos, in the books I have here, and these NICAP reports, the UFO came intentionally around aircraft flying passengers up in the air and toyed with them and flew under them and flew over them and made sure that they were noticed. That's a bit suspicious, don't you think? So if there has been intelligent life on this planet all along, and if for some reason these intellectual, intelligent beings have deemed that, there's just too many people on the planet for our satisfaction. We can't go to the beach without there being people around. So let's kill the people. Resources, gas, water, food. Whatever the reason, it certainly seems like overpopulation is their biggest concern. And they may be using this alien hoax, threat, whatever information they have as an excuse to justify their actions. I don't know, but I'm the kind of person who thinks critically, asks questions, and is looking for answers. Thank you for watching my video. And let's ask Mr. Pendulum here about my will. That's off to the right. My gut. That's off to the right. And you don't even want to know what happens when I take a pendulum and I put it over George Bush's picture, or Dick Cheney, or Obama. Go buy a pendulum and try it for yourself. Rick Miracle reporting.